Today's daf is daf Samach Hey. We're actually up to the last narrow line on the page towards the bottom, a few lines above the Mishnah. And we're having the discussion, argument between Rabbi Kiva, fundamental argument, Kiva Chachamim, whether a person sells a product, is he being generous and he sells them more than you would think? And if he retains anything for himself, he has to buy the rights to go back to that boy of his, because he sold everything, the property, to the other person. Or do we say moicha b'ayra moicha? He protects himself. So if he retained ownership of the buyer, he also has the rights to get to the buyer. Doesn't have to fly via the air, parachute himself in, and therefore he doesn't have to purchase those rights. So the Gemara continues now, and we're going to basically say that there's a difference between a gift and a sale. That means even the Chachamim, who say, when it comes to a sale, they say, if you sell a product, you protect yourself more than you protect the buyer. So therefore, if you can retain ownership of the buyer, you can also retain ownership of the path to get to the buyer. But when it comes to a gift, the Chacham made, if you gifted someone the house and the courtyard and you retained ownership of the buyer, you gave them everything. Why do you give them a gift? Because you like them. And if you want to be able to walk to the buyer, you need to get permission or negotiate something with the person you gifted to. And that's important, as the Gemara will say here. Itma, we learned. You have two houses, one on the inside and one on the outside. So house number A is in the inside and house number B is on the outside. To get to house A, you have to walk through house B. So what happened was, if you sold both houses to two different people, it's not a question. Until now, we were learning it was a meicher. The vendor retained something for himself, and then he sold the rest. So then we talk about whether the meicher thinks about his own interests or he just sells everything to the other person and worries about himself later. But here in this case, there's no priority here. You sold both properties to two separate people. Or Shneim and Matani gifted. No, they're both equal on par. So what happens there? You'll argue that when you sold something, you sold something. Even the Chacham might be meicher because you sold him, the first guy. You sold him everything. You can tell me, but you sold the other guy everything, including it should be including the rights to walk to his property on the inside. But the outside guy, you also ba'ayin yofa meicher. Ayin yofa would mean you sold him the entire property. That means that no one else has a right to intrude and go through your properties. Each one is equal to the next. And both of them are the same. So the guy who lives inside wants to get to his house. In this case, he has to buy the rights from the guy on the outside. We're not going to prioritize one person over the other. They're both equal. So the guy on the inside has no right just to walk through the guy on the outside. He has to negotiate. Koshken, surely, if chitzay b'matana, remember you're more generous with matana. If the outer house you gifted that person, and the inner house you sold that person, so surely when the outer house you gave him everything, including the pathway, everything belongs to the outer house, and the inner house wants to walk into his house, he needs to negotiate with the outer house. What about chitzay b'mecher b'pnim matana? Here's our question: the outer house you sold. And according to Rabbi Kiva, you're generous when you sell. So l'chayda, when you sold him the house, you also sold him all the pathways and everything else belongs to the outer house. But the inner house, you gave a gift. And when you gift, perhaps a gift is even be more generous. Do we say sort of on par with selling a house? So again, the same situation. The inner house has to buy the rights, negotiate from the outer house. Or do we say no? Since you gifted the inner house, you probably were more generous with him, and therefore you probably gave him the pathway through the outer house to get to his house. How do we view that? Does Rabbi Kiva make a difference between matana and mecher? So we would have thought, it's the same thing. You're generous, according to Rabbi Kiva, you're generous by mecher just as well. So if a mecher and matana are the same thing, then neither of them have an advantage, and each one you sold it completely. However, it's not like that. We're going to go to the Chachamim. Since we'll see by the Rabbanon that they hold that gifting you're far more generous than by selling, in that Svara, Rabbi Kiva doesn't argue. So Rabbi Kiva, even though he holds when you sell, generally you're generous, but he'll also concede that when it comes to a gift, he'll be even more generous. So even according to Rabbi Akiva, the guy in the inner has the right to walk through the house of the guy in the outer. We didn't learn by Medra. When the Chachamim say, they argue, you gifted, definitely you gave it all away. Even the Rabbanon will be made that when it comes to a gift, you're generous because you gift someone that you like. Saying over here by Rabbi Kiva that the gift you're more generous than the seller, so therefore if you gifted the inner property and the only way to get there is by walking through the outer property, you obviously included the path with that. Mishnah, continuing to discuss when you sell something, do you sell the chattel with it, and what kind of chattel? There's all kinds of. So you have the house, and you have things in the house that are fixed into the house, that part of the house, and then you have things that are sort of not so fixed in the house. I mean, they're heavy furniture and everything else, but it's not so fixed in the house. You could physically pick it up and take it out. And then you have just generally metallic things which are easy, tools, dishes, and all kinds of things. And the question is, when you sell the house, what's included in the sale? This is apart from the Bava Basra that are outside of the house, and they're not even part of the house. They don't do the house. Just it supports those who are living in the house. You need water to drink, but it's definitely not part of the house. So it says the Mishnah, you sell a house, not the mochas adelis. Obviously, the door goes with the house. What's a house without a door? We learned before, even if you move into a ger's house that's hefker and you build an entire palace, but you didn't close the doors, you didn't do anything, because a house without doors is not a house. In fact, the Rambam paskins halach l'mais, even though we don't follow the Rambam, that if you have a room without a door, you don't need a mezuzah. It's not a room. It's not a room. It's not a door. We paskin that even if there's no door there, you still put a mezuzah on. But the Rambam clearly holds you not. There's no mezuzah there because it's not a house, not a door, not a room. The key, since it's portable, is not included in the sale. You sold the mortar that is fixed, not that is portable. Not that is portable. In other words, if it's fixed in the ground, it becomes part of the house. Even though it's not the house, it's a tool that you use to crush things. But because it's fixed in the house, it's part of the sale. But if it's a mortar that is mobile, then it's not included in the sale. It's metallic. You have a mill. So in the mill, you have a stone on the bottom, a ring on the bottom that's permanently there. That's part of the sale. It's a kelis. But not, let's say, you have the thing called a hopper, where you put all the grains in before it falls into the mill. That can be picked up and moved somewhere else. Not part of the sale. Our version is that the tanner and the karayim, the oven and the stove, are not included because they're talking about portable ovens. There's another version that is shining where it says you did sell the tanner and karayim. That's talking about permanent. So the principle is the same. But if I'm selling the house and everything that's in there, then they are sold. What's kulan? So what's sold? My dishes are sold. What's sold? Sold are all of these things that we mentioned over here. Why did I say kol masha b'toichei? He's saying all these things that we said. You might have thought it should be included: the key, the hopper that was mobile. But if I say kol masha b'toichei, I'm adding something. I'm adding those things. I'm not adding everything else. And the Rashbam very nicely here explains that there are three different cases in the Gemara in the next few prokim. One is if you sell a house and you say kol masha b'toichei. One is you sell a field and you say, or a chotzer, a field, a city. You sell a city. We have an area in a concept called an Irsha Yachid. Guy owns a city, 100 people. So you sell a city. And basically what the Rashbam says is that if each one is bigger, the logic behind here is metaltim that are easily moved around are not bottled to your house because they move around. Number one, they're not bottled to your house. Number two, if you're selling a house, you might be moving to a house next door in the same chutzner. So if a house next door, heavy things, it's too big of a bother, you'll just get new ones. But when it comes to the easy things to move around, what's the big deal? You transfer from one house to the next house, so it's not part of your sale. That's the logic by house. By a chutzner, we say that it includes more things than a house. By a soda, we say it includes even more things than that. And then by city includes everything. And what's the logic? Why every time you sell something greater, larger, you're including more things? Because the larger the thing that you're selling, then things which are not so chashuv are bottled to it. So things which are not bottled to a house might be bottled to a chutzner, might be bottled to a sada, like wheat and barley. Avodim and behemoths. You sell a city, avodim and behemoths, your slaves and behemoths are included in it, because the city is a big thing, it's bottled to it. Number one. Number two, if you're selling a house, you're probably moving next door. If you're selling a chutzner, you might be moving a few streets down. So then it's a tircha, it's a bother to schlep everything. So you're prepared to leave more things in the house. If you're selling a field, it's even a bigger body. Selling a city, you're moving far away. You don't want anything. It's much easier If you're moving from Australia to America, to just sell everything up over here and buy new things there, then to schlep everything over there, it's a big tircha, big bother. Plus, things can break along the way, and so on. Okay, Gemara. Lema Masnisin. Let us say that our Mishnah that says, according to Rish Bama Shem, it says that you do not sell a mortar that moves, that's mobile. Only the mortar that's fixed is sold, but not the mortar that's mobile. The chayda does not consist of Rameir. Rameir says, he says, Mocha Zakedem, Mocha Tashmisha Kedem. You sell a vineyard by vines, they usually put a stick, a rod to hold the vine in place, a vertical rod, and they tie it around the vine so that it should grow straight. This rod can be moved around. It's just a rod. It's not stuck in anywhere. And so we see it, Rameir holds that even though something is metaltalin, is included in the sale. So our mission that says, let's say a machteshes that is mobile, is not included in the sale. Clear mission hold like Rameir. Or according to Taisus and other Shainim, we're focusing on the key. The key is mobile, and the mission says the key is not included in the sale. And according to Rameir, the rod, a key is needed for a house, just like a rod is needed for the vines. And yet Rameir holds the rod is included in the sale. So it means Rameir holds even metaltalin are included in the sale if they're necessary for whatever it is that you're selling. So the Gemara, no, I feel the Rameir. Some kaviyah, even though the rod is portable, mobile, but once you tie it to the vines, you never take it away. You leave it there forever. But over here, it's not permanent. You do move it around from time to time. The mortar, you move from place to place. And therefore, because it's not permanent, that's why the maid himself, you can see that it's not included in the sale. Sometimes you lend it to somebody, not often, but even though it's heavy, you might lend it to somebody. Says the Gemara, the Mishnah makes a contrast between a key and a door. The door is part of the sale, the key is not part of the sale. Now, it seems to me, Madel is the kiviyah of mafteh. We say a key, we're talking about a key that's permanent and locked in the door. They had these big, heavy wooden keys, and the wooden key was always sitting in the lock on the inside, and that's how you opened the lock from the inside. The key never moved. If there's a difference between, you're telling me that Rameir could fit into our Mishnah, and depends if you move it sometimes or you leave it. The rod is always stuck to the vines, but the key moves sometimes. So what the Mishnah should have said is that two kinds of keys. Those keys that are permanently fixed in the lock are included in the sale, and those keys that are not permanently fixed in the lock are not included in the sale. Yet the Mishnah doesn't do that. Instead, it draws a contrast between a door and a key. What does that prove, it seems? It comes to prove that a key, even if it's permanently in the door or locked, according to our Mishnah, is not included in the sale because you can always pull it out and move it around. So our Mishnah does not agree with Rameir. What's clear is Mastis in the lake of Rameir. Our Mishnah is not consistent with Rameir. Talking about me, a moicher, it's a bayit. Somebody sells a house. The door is included. There's a naga, the bolt that goes from the top of the door to the ceiling. That's what a bolt is. There's a manel, is a lock in the door. The key is not included in the sale, like it says in our Mishnah. Now, there's two kinds of machteshes. Even a permanent machteshes, there's two kinds of permanent machteshes. One, this is how the Rashbam learns. One permanent machteshes is that there's a rock in your house, and you carve out and it's like the two kinds of machteshes. One is you take a rock, you embed it in the ground, and then once it's in the ground, you then carve out of it the mortar, and you can use that as a mortar to crush your vegetables, whatever you're going to crush, wheat. The other one is first you shape a mortar and then you attach it to the ground. So they're both kavua, but the difference is the first one it never was a keli, it was never a mortar before it was attached to the ground already. So it's part of the house. This brisa holds. But the second one, first it was a mortar and then you attach it to the house. That does not have the status of karka of a house because it was already had a status of a keli before you attach it to the ground. That's how the Rashbam learns. Taisa learns, and others learn that no, the difference is between you have already a boulder attached in the house, and you never attach it to the house. It's part of the house, and you carved out of that machteshes. That's considered a house. But if you took a stone and put it into the house, connected it, or you took a mortar and you connected the house, either one makes no difference. That's not part of the house because you added it on. So, what's the difference? Go to this. I will that according to Rashbam, that machteshes that you carved and you took a rock and you attached it to the ground, and then you carved out of that a mortar while it was attached to the ground. That's considered part of the house. But if you first carved it outside and then you attached it to the ground, even though now it's attached to the house, it's not part of the house. Or according to Taisus, if the rock itself was attached, it's not part of the house. Even I don't care when you formed a border out of it. Okay. You sold the bottom ring of a mortar. Sorry, go ahead. That's permanent there. But not the hopper, which can move around. Not the stove, not the oven, not the stove. And nor the mill, which is on top, it picks up and you move it around. Rabbi Lezer disagrees, and he says, I don't care if you made the mortar first, you made the mortar afterwards. Right now, it's embedded in the ground as part of the house. It's a karka. Though even though you might have made a keli before, but once you attach it to the house, it loses the status of being a keli, a separate utensil. It now forms part of the house. Okay, that's a very important machlekes. We'll come back to that. Bisman she'omar. So we have machlekes. Once something is a keli, that's how we understand the Braisa now. Once something is a keli, it always, according to Chachamim, once something is a keli, even though you attach it to the ground and anything else, it never loses its original status. According to Rabbi Lezer, it doesn't matter what it originally was. Now that it's part of the house, it's parei karka. But this man if he added that clause, everything that's in the house, everything that we just mentioned is sold. He does not sell the boy is not included. The boy is the pit we said before with the walls of sand. That's like a cistern which has walls around it. Some Rishonim holds above the ground. And that's the room. Either we had a machlekes training before, whether that's a room that's attached to the house, like a granny flat, something in the back of the house for warehousing, or upstairs. So it says the Gemara, we learn now. We're going to say the following. But by a mikveh, we have a din called maim shuv. A mikveh has to be natural water, rainwater, spring water. And you need 40 saw for a person, even though spring water we say for kalim it's enough. That's matai b'koshu, but when it comes to a mikveh, many hold ma'ataydi, you still need 40 saw. And we have a thing called mayim shuvin. Mayim shuvin is water that's sitting inside a vessel utensil. Drawn water is not kosher for a mikveh. If you have a mikveh where more than 20 of the saw are proper, what do you call it? Make geshem, rainwater, for example, spring water, then if you add mayim shuvin, the rest, 19 saw, for example, mayim shuvin, then according to most poskim, it's only asam midrabanan, not mahatayra. When is it asam mahatayra? If majority of that mikveh is mayim shuvin, then mahatayra it's possible. Some say the mayim shuvin is always only possible midrabanan, even if all of it is. So. Then we have a thing called, if you have mayim shuvim, introduction to that piece. You have mayim shuvim. If you have a whole mikveh of mayim shuvim, but right next to it you have a kosher mikveh, and the two touch each other. We have hashaka. They kiss each other. They touch each other. The waters, as long as they're touching each other, then that transforms the 40 saw of water that you have, which is drawn water. You can use for a mikveh because it's attached to another pool, which is of make shamim, of rainwater. If you have, the problem is about pipes. How do you use pipes and all that? Because a pipe might be considered a keli. So if the water, even if it's rainwater, if it comes to the mikveh let's say in a metal pipe, then it goes into the mikveh. It might be a problem that it's mayim shuvim because it's going through a keli, going through the utensils. And so the big machlekes in the poskim, what's the definition of a pipe? When is it considered a keli? Or does it have to, if it's open on both ends, maybe it's not a keli at all because it doesn't hold anything. The water continues. A keli has to be able to have a receptacle. So if the pipe has an elbow, for example, a hook, and always a little bit of water sitting there in that little area, then that's a keli. But if it's open on both ends, the machlekes and the rishonim, whether it's considered a keli or not considered a keli. Also, if you have a pipe, so if the Gemara talks about a pipe and the Gemara talks about a pipe being a keli, they used to also sometimes make a hole in the pipe and put some stones in there. And since it's holding the stones, that makes it a keli as well. Now, there's two kinds of pipes. There's a pipe where you take a pipe and then you put it under the ground. Let's say you make a pipe out of a stone, and you put it under the ground. So now l'chayda, you want to argue it forms part of the ground, part of the karka. There's no longer has an independence, no longer a pipe is part of the ground. That's one kind of a pipe. Another one is you dig a hole in the ground and while you're digging a hole in the ground, you make sort of a pipe out of the ground, out of the dirt over there, and it was never an independent pipe. So here in this brayse, we're going to make a distinction between these two pipes. If it was formed out of the ground, you made a pipe out of the ground, so then we say, well, it was always karka, it was never a separate keli. So the water going through there is not considered mayim shuvim. But if you had a pipe first and then you put it into the ground, since it already had the status of a keli, it's considered what do you call it? A keli, and it's mayim shuvim. When we talk about mayim shuvim, a pipe, we're talking about where the water goes directly into the mikveh from this pipe. So we have a problem, maybe mayim shuvim. But if the water of the pipe goes out onto the ground and then it travels on the ground to the mikveh, that's called hamshacha, and that does not. It's no longer considered shuvim, because when it travels on the ground to go in the mikveh, it didn't come directly from a keli into the mikveh. So why are we saying all this? We're going to see whether Rabbi Lezer is compatible with this view here. Remember, Rabbi Lezer said when you sell a house, everything is included in this. Rabbi Lezer says that harega karka. Rabbi Lezer says, I don't care if you make the mortar first. If you first had a mortar, then you put it in the ground, or then you first was the ground and then you carved it out. It's all the same. It's part of the house. So he doesn't make it. He doesn't care if the pipe was fashioned first and then you place it under the ground or you put it in the ground. So it seems that Rabbi Lezer does not agree with this din of mikveh. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Lezer, sitting at a pipe. That first you made the pipe and then and then you go ahead and you install it in the ground, place as a mikveh. It never lost the status of being a pipe, and therefore it's possible to mikveh. But if first you have it in the ground, and then out of that you form your pipe, you dig out, you put it in the ground, and you dig out the hole, you make it hollow. Once it's in the ground, then it ain't a place of mikveh. So who makes that distinction? Mani loy Rabbi Lezer v'loy Rabbanan. It's not Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Lezer holds no difference by machtesha, the mortar, when you made the mortar, as long as now it's in the ground. And nor is it the Rabbanan. Now, when we say not the Rabbanan, we don't mean the Rabbanan of the Brisa before, because definitely it is the Rabbanan of the Brisa before. The Rabbanan of the Brisa before, by the house, clearly made a distinction between whether you put the pipe in the ground first, whether machteshes was in the ground, was part of the ground, or whether machteshes you made first and then you put it in the ground. That's the Rabbanan. However, so that Rabbanan fits in exactly here. It's a different Rabbanan, as we'll see later. So, Rabbi Lezer is no. I can argue that you're conflating issues. The argument in the case of the house has nothing to do with the argument in the case of the mikveh. Maybe Rabbi Lezer holds by a mikveh agrees that if you had a pipe first, then you put in the ground, it's mayim shuvim. But by house, Rabbi Lezer says, I follow Rabbi Akiva that a person generally is very generous. So even though technically, halachically, that machteshes that you made first and then put in the ground, technically it's considered a machteshes, not part of the house. But as far as a sale is concerned, when you sold the house, you sold that with it. Nothing to do with the halachic status when it comes to mikveh. Nothing to do with the mikveh. I'll tell you what Rabbi Lezer is talking about. Rabbi Lezer, the kavet is the body. You have a beehive. We're talking about a beehive, and the beehive was cemented down to the ground. And it says the following. Now we learn, kavet is the body. You have a beehive for bees. Rabbi Lezer says, because it's cemented down, that's how we understood the Bryce right now. Because it's the Mishnah right now, because it's cemented down, it has a din of karka. And because it has a din of karka, the koishun aleh pruzbul. What's the concept of pruzbul? We had in the Gemara in Gittin, where they made a special, Hillel made a special takana. We learned this week's parsha that the laws of Shemitah, that all the loans are forfeited when it comes to the Shemitah, but the Torah clearly admonishes one who avoids lending money because he's scared Shemitah will come, he won't pay me, I'll forfeit the whole loan. And Hillel saw that was happening, it was rife. So what did he do? He made a thing called a pruzbul. The word pruzbul comes from two words, praise, boiler. Boiler means rich people, and praise means, expand. Help rich people make money. In other words, help them not to lose their loans. So what did he do? He made the concept of a pruzbul, which according to Rashi, Rashbam, and other Rishonim, the idea of a pruzbul is it's as if you give over to Bezdin your loan. Torah says, you should not approach the person that you lend the money to and collect the money, but I'm not doing it. It's the Bezdin. And Bezdin has the right, authority to take people's money away. So it's as if Bezdin is the one who's collecting. Bezdin is the one who's collecting money, not me. and that's why it's permitted. But it only works if there's karka. It only works if the borrower has land, and this we had a discussion there earlier in Taisus whether every Jew automatically has land in Israel. But he must have land. Otherwise, you have to gift him a piece of land. Doesn't matter what size the land is, because they're known as the karka of Rav Katina. We had in Exodus. But and the logic behind that, why do you need karka at all? So we have two opinions why you need karka. One opinion is the Rashbam brings the name of Rashi because everyone generally who lends money wants security. And security is karka. So therefore, when the Chachamim make a takana, they usually want a milsa d'shkicha, something which is common. A milsa d'shkicha, something which is uncommon. The Chachamim don't make takanas. Since nobody lends money unless there's security, a piece of land or something, so the Chachamim didn't make the takana approvable if there's no land. When did they make the takana approvable? Only in the general cases where there's land. That's why the leiva has to have land. The other reason is, if the other Rishonim say, including the Rashbam, that if the leiva has land, it's as if the leiva already paid you. It's as if already I have a security over the land. It says I got paid already. In fact, when you're paying me the loan, you're paying it to get your land back, even though the land might not be worth the full amount of the loan. So we have the thing of Ma'aser of Ketina where you can I collect the land and I give it back to you. I collect the land, and give it back to you over numerous times until I get the full value back. Okay, so this kaved is the Baidim has a din of land. The Ein Mekabel Tumah, we know that anything which fixed only mobile things can become tummy, not something which fixed in the land. This beehive is fixed, therefore it's no Mekabel Tumah. As long as it's standing there, the moment you move it, it's portable. It is Mekabel Tumah. If you take honey out of this beehive on Shabbos, it's like you're taking away tolush, like you're taking away from something which is attached from a mechuber, and you did a malacha. Chayu chatas. That's our Belez's view. In other words, even though you took it and you stuck it to the ground. No, the beehive is not stuck to the ground. You cemented it down, had it in the karka. And the Chum disagree. They say any karka. It started out as a beehive, even though you cemented it's not karka. Then you can't write a principle because it's not karka. It is makabel to me, even while sitting in the ground, it's fixed because it doesn't lose its status as being something which is a portable thing. If you do that on Shabbos, you're potter. So we see clearly from here a machlekes that this idea that you have something, a kedi, which is detached, and then you attach it, what is the status? Does it lose its original status or not? So this thing of bar mikveh does not come out according to Rabbi Lezer. Says the Gemara, no. Beehive is different. We're not, you think we're focusing on the beehive. No, we're not. We're focusing on the honey. And the honey from the beehive, I don't care the beehive is attached around and out. How do we view the honey while it's sitting inside the beehive? So Amar Rabbi Lezer, time of Amar Rabbi Lezer says, the Rabbi Lezer the Amoida said the Tana, my time of the Rabbi Lezer. What's Rabbi Lezer's logic? The Chsiv, it says that when Shalom El said that no one should eat, they had the war there, and Yenison wasn't aware of Shalom El's decree, and he went and he had honey there. Like Yitbal Oysa, he dipped it over there, his thing, Biyaris Advash. And he used the expression, the forest of honey. Strange expression, yaris. My yaris, just like a forest. If you cut off from a forest, it's yechai v'chatas av dvash hareidim memra shabachatas. The dvash has a din like karka because you have a pasuk that the dvash is like a yar and a din like karka, and therefore all of the din apply. We're not focusing on the beehive attached to the ground. That's what we thought. We're focusing on the honey that's attached to the beehive. And therefore, and because that special pasuk yar chatas, nothing to do with a pipe if you attach it later as a luda stays or not. So we haven't yet figured out which Rabbi Lezer it is, which Rabbanan. We'll continue tomorrow in Mitzvah.